Hello folks, how are you doing? It's James, JT at the movies, back here again in my movie space, and again joined by my lovely girlfriend Laura.
Hello.
And today we are going to talk about 2019's Terminator Dark Fate. Straight off the bat, I'm going to say I absolutely love this film. It's a great sequel to Terminator and Terminator 2. For those who don't know, it disregards Terminator 3, Salvation and Genesis, as they'd kind of written themselves into a corner with those films, and the writing team behind this wanted to take the film in a new direction from Terminator 2. They wanted to be able to bring Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor back, and basically have free reign from where to go with that story. Terminator 2 ends perfectly in the sense that they stop Judgment Day, and they stop Skynet from being built, and it sort of brings everything to a close. So really we never needed a third film, but if we were ever going to get a third story, this, for my money, is where it should have gone. I know that this film has gotten a lot of hate and a lot of sort of mixed, almost to negative reviews from a lot of sources, but then it's also got some positive reviews. I'm very much in the positive camp for this. I thoroughly enjoyed it, more so than I've enjoyed any of the Terminator sequels that have come and gone in the last sort of 20 years. And I think we're just going to talk a little bit today about why. So we pick up, and do you know what? I've put a spoiler warning at the beginning of the video. If you don't want to hear about the plot, then skip ahead. Skip ahead now, and I'll put a title card as to when it's safe to listen from again. Right, okay, so the film opens up in 1998. We have digitally de-aged John Connor, again played motion capture by Edward Furlong, and a digitally de-aged Sarah Connor. They're in South America, enjoying some peace and quiet at a bar, when Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 shows up and kills John Connor. That straight away sets the tone for this film. John Connor is out of the picture, he's not coming back. We then flash forward 20 years later and we're in Mexico. We meet up with Danny, who is the new protagonist for this film. She and her brother work at a metalworks plant, and then basically alongside that the film sets up their story, and we have Grace, who's an augmented human. She's half human, half Terminator, a bit of a concept carried over from Salvation, but done better in this film in my opinion. She turns up through her portal and sets off on her mission to find Danny, and then we also have the villain of the piece, which is called the Rev 9, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
If it's not, we'll put a card underneath. But yeah, I'm going to call him the Rev 9 for the rest of this review, and he's the new bad Terminator in the future that never happened. Obviously, Skynet is stopped and all of that, so none of that takes place. But in its wake, another system, another company called Legion, rose from those ashes and still created Terminators. It now turns out that they're after Danny, and we don't find out quite why until we're into the plot. Grace makes contact with Danny, and the chase ensues from the Rev 9 and them two. Along the way, they meet Sarah Connor, who is fantastically reintroduced on a scene where they're in a battle on a bridge. There's been a car chase, there's been explosions, all hope seems lost, and then Sarah Connor turns up. It takes some of the tropes, doesn't it, from the previous ones, like the I'll be back line and things like that. And you were saying, weren't you, with that?
Yeah, just the way they introduce her in that bit, it's just absolutely amazing. And just the way she says it, it's just like, for God's sake, I'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like we've got to get that in there somewhere, but how can we? And I really liked it. It takes them on the road as the journey. They're basically trying to get to the location of an unknown contact that's been sending Sarah Connor the details of where Terminators, where and when Terminators are going to arrive in time, so that she can get there and destroy them. Basically, we get to that point and we find out that it's actually Arnold Schwarzenegger's now aged Terminator. He's come back in time. He's killed John Connor at the beginning of the movie. And then because the future that he came from never existed, he's basically stuck in this sort of limbo, and so adapts and learns to become more human, takes on a wife and family. That's possibly my only gripe with the film, is that bit's played a little bit silly, but they didn't take it too far,
No, yeah.
and that there's almost that little bit of an emotional sort of it sort of tugs the heartstrings a little bit, where he says goodbye to the family, and he's like, the day I told them was coming has finally come, and I'll never see them again. And sort of you think, oh, that's a bit of a, and you actually care, but then obviously because he's the Terminator that's killed John, there's a very much an unlikely alliance between Sarah Connor and Arnie's T-800 in this. She says, when this is done, I'm going to kill you, and their journeys, a really great one to watch. There's a fantastic scene in it where they're in the back of a plane, they're taking off, and the Rev 9's coming for them, and you've got Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor stood there, machine gun in hand, Arnie stood there dressed as the Terminator, leather jacket on, firing the guns at this thing, and it's just like the band's back together sort of a scene.
Oh yeah.
What did you think about the film, though?
I liked it. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. The first time we saw it in the cinema and the second time we watched it as well. The one thing I've got to say is I think the effects have really improved. Like, do you remember in Terminator 2, that one that comes back to kill John? Every time he takes damage, it just makes him look like he's made out of liquid mercury. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point of that one, though, isn't it? And those effects still stand up.
Yeah, in this, they've improved it a little bit. They've made it darker, more machine-like. Yeah, and they've given the, again, spoiler if you've not seen it, I don't know whether it matters, but the one that comes back to kill Danny, he kind of splits into two, doesn't he?
Yeah, so his exoskeleton can come out, but then the sort of the liquid metal that covers him that allows him to
really
morph.
Improved that, I think. They've really sort of improved that, made it look like it's twisting and winding around the exoskeleton and things like that.
I wouldn't say that they've improved it. I think they've just taken a great concept and elaborated on it. I think that the Robert Patrick performance in T2 is phenomenal.
It is really good.
And
Don't
to
get me
say
wrong.
that they're nearly 30 years old at this point, obviously we're recording this in 2020, and did T2 come out in 91? So 29
Something like
years.
that, yeah.
And those effects still stand up. But yeah, naturally, technology's got better, and so things are going to be sharper and crisper.
For me, it's how, I guess you could say, that relationship kind of builds, the love-hate relationship between Arnie and Linda Hamilton in it. Between Arnie's character and Sarah Connor, she starts off by hating him. The moment they go up to his door where he's living and she sees him, all she wants to do is kill him, and she nearly does until Grace steps in. And how, I wouldn't say a strong bond, but a relationship builds between them throughout the film.
It's sort of like the common goal connects them. It's like, we know we've got to protect Danny, because ultimately she ends up being the new John Connor, if you like. She ends up being the reason that everything's going on, and we learn more about Grace's backstory as we go, and the whole thing just ties neatly together, so that, in my opinion, they need not make another sequel. They didn't need to make this one, to be fair. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad that they did, because it's something that I'll be able to watch, and I think as a trilogy, if you like, I probably won't ever go back to the later sequels again, but I'd happily watch Terminator, T2, and then into Dark Fate, and it just what a great trilogy.
It just works.
It really does. James Cameron returns as a producer for this one. It's directed by Tim Miller, who did Deadpool. The two of them apparently didn't get on well. They clashed on set and behind the scenes, and have said that they won't work together again. So I do think that it's a one-off sort of thing. I don't think it's going to spawn any more sequels, and I hope that the studio's smart enough to let Sleeping Dogs lie and not try and bring this one back again. I've sort of said before, I think in another video, that the 2010s as a decade were a decade really where there was a lot of these getting the band back together movies. We did Force Awakens, and there's going to be Ghostbusters this summer. Obviously there's Terminator. There's so many of these films that you think of where they're just Rambo. They've done so many of them where it's like, well, we'll do one last ride, and honestly, the concept's sort of been done to death now, and I think it's time that we move on and we bring some new classics out, and we have some films that are in 20 years' time going to be remembered in the same way that we feel about Terminator 2, and all these films that like I say, from the... But that really is a bit of an aside. Have you anything else to say on the Terminator Dark Fate?
I guess there's one thing I want to say. I don't know whether I should say spoiler for this, but
there's a spoiler warning at the beginning.
There's a scene right at the end of the film where it makes reference to Terminator 2, you know, where Danny stood at that fence looking into that park. I just really like how they've added that in there.
Oh yeah, there's lots of homages to the whole franchise. Even some of the films that they've, like I say, retconned. You know, like I say, the idea of grace is something that's kind of touched on with Sam Worthington's character in. Well, he is a Terminator and he doesn't know, but the idea sort of sets the scene there for sort of somebody who's augmented, and he obviously has a heart, doesn't he? In Salvation, if I'm remembering it rightly. It's been that long since I've seen it. But yeah, there's lots of nice homages, isn't there? And then there's that bit again where her and Linda Hamilton sort of drive off into the sort of the distance, and that's very reminiscent of the end of Terminator 1. Linda Hamilton's sort of set to, you know, sort of, I know what I need to do, and she drives off as the do plays. And this film ends, you know, very similar. As always, Arnie's Terminator has to die. He can't live to fight another day.
Yeah.
And that's handled quite well, and there's sort of like that redemption bit for him. He's killed John Connor. Yeah, he's a machine. No, he doesn't really feel human emotion, but because he's, like you say, he's got his, I think he's got his learning chip enabled, like, you know, the bit from the extended T2 where they do the thing in the back of his head. I think this one's got that enabled as well, and he begins to not feel but appreciate what he's taken away from Sarah Connor, and that's his motive for doing what he's done in this film. I really enjoyed it.
I did as well, yeah, definitely. I'd happily watch that again.
Yeah, I think it is one that, you know, it's good popcorn fun. It's not Terminator 2. It's never going to be Terminator 2 or even the Terminator, but you know, it's the best third Terminator movie that we were ever going to get. I think they finally got it right with this one, and I think that they should, like I say, let it be now and move on. And you know, they've done it justice. They've rounded it off. If they had to be a third one, this is the third one that we should have got, in my opinion. Just a really good little film.
Definitely.
Ratings time.
What do you think?
I'm going to go 7 out of 10.
I'm going to go 8, purely for Linda Hamilton's acting. She's absolutely brilliant. She makes these films.
She does, and I think, do you know what? I think that's the key ingredient that was missing from from Terminator 3 onwards, is that she's missing. It's never, in my opinion, been John Connor's story. It's Sarah Connor's story, and although he might be the central plot point and the MacGuffin almost, if you like, it's Sarah's story. So then to remove her from 3 onwards, I think that's how they wrote themselves into a corner, because they tried to do 3, but then it just didn't work. And the chap that they cast to replace Edward Furlong, it just didn't work. And you found yourself, even though Claire Danes' character wasn't cracking in it, you found yourself sort of leaning more towards her as a likeable character. Arnie was phoning that one in, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And Salvation had some interesting concepts, and he's probably the best of the 3 Terminators that have been retconned, but even still isn't great. And Christian Bale just doesn't work for me as John Connor. And then the less that's said about Terminator Genesis, the better. What an absolute yeah. And I try to be fairly positive about films and look for but no, that one's, I've got it up there somewhere. And I didn't see it in the cinemas. I missed it in the cinemas, and I went and bought it day one, because I do love this franchise, and I've stuck with it through thick and thin. And I went and bought it day one, watched it, and was like, what is this? I don't know why I've still got it, to be fair. I could get it donated, but I'm a completist. Yeah. But anyway, 7 from me, and an 8 from you, Laura?
Yep, 8 from me.
And thank you very much for watching our ramblings on Terminator Dark Fate. If you've liked what we've had to say today, if you've liked the video, drop us a like, give us that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. If you guys have similar thoughts or even different thoughts, leave a comment below, let us know. We'll gladly engage in discussion. That's what I love about film, is the fact that it's so subjective, and you know, that I could have one opinion, Laura might have another, and everybody else. It's fantastic, and it just lends itself so well to having a really great discussion about it all. Thanks so much for watching, folks. Take care, and we'll see you soon.